Hello?
Hello?
Oh, I'm just talking because I can't hear anything. How are you?
I'm well. I can't hear anything either.
All right, so it'll come on. You stay
Hello.
home also.
Okay, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning,
Okay.
Rabbi.
Good morning. So, I guess whoever's listening on the phone is safe and dry. And I'm actually here at shul, but wherever you're listening from, we can do what we usually do. That's the advantage of having a phone hookup. So, let's get to work. We were talking about the concept of work done for you, not by you. Work done for you by a non-Jew. And we saw that it is forbidden, generally speaking, to request directly that a non-Jew should work for you on Shabbos. That request is not allowed even if you make it before Shabbos, because the request itself is a problem. So you can't say, please turn on the light today at the Shabbos. You can't say, please turn on the light tomorrow, on Friday. There are exceptions for a sick person, but the general rule is that there's nothing that you can really ask a non-Jew to do for you on Shabbos unless it's not work. In which case you can do it yourself. Now, you could ask a non-Jew to do something at his convenience. And if he decides to do it on Shabbos, that's not your problem. So if you ask, your boss or your employee or your whoever it may be to write up a report, and they decide to do it on Shabbos, that's not your problem. If you ask them to fix your watch, you drop it off, the repairman will fix your shoes or dry clean your suit or fix your car. If they decide to do it on Shabbos, it's also not your problem. However, that's just as far as your role in asking, requesting the work. The rule is you can't ask for the work to be done on Shabbos, but if you're not asking for it to be done on Shabbos, the fact that someone's doing it on Shabbos for you is not your problem. Even if you ask for the work, but as long as you didn't ask for it to be done then. You can also, by the way, have the reverse. You can ask for something to be done on Shabbos, but not ask for work. For example, hey, please wash my dishes. They decide to use hot water. You didn't request that it would be done with hot water. You asked. Washing the dishes doesn't have to be work. Even a Jew can wash dishes on Shabbos if they use cold water. If the non-Jew decides to use hot water, that's their business. So it sounds almost funny, but it's two opposite examples which both indicate the same thing. If you ask someone to do work, but you don't say that it should be done on Shabbos, or if you ask that something should be done on Shabbos, but you don't require it to be done in a way which involves work, say, please wash your dishes in time for tomorrow morning's Kiddush, but it's up to you whether you want to use hot water or not. Yeah. That's also, in principle, not a problem. There are, in some cases, I should just say, issues of appearance, we call maras ayin. Let's say if you hire a house painter or a landscaper, and they decide to come on Shabbos, and you may not have asked them to come on Shabbos, but because they're working on, one of the guidelines is they're working on your property, on land or a home that belongs to you. That tends to be something which is seen as a more public act. People see it, people know it's being done, and there are different details that have to be analyzed. But the basic rule is that something that will be visible to other people, and those people who see it may not know that you did the right thing. You did not ask for this work to be done on Shabbos, but other people don't know that. Maybe you did ask for it to be done on Shabbos. So the first step, again, is that you should not ask for the work to be done on Shabbos. If it is done on Shabbos, but to the non-Jew's own choice, it's not your problem. But if people see it and they think that it was asked that it was requested for Shabbos, it could be a problem anyways because of the way it appears to others. So a safe type of illustration that doesn't have any of those problems is say dropping off your clothing at the dry cleaners. Nobody sees or knows that it's yours. You didn't ask for it to be done by a specific time. So it's not your problem if the non-Jew decides to do it on Shabbos. Of course, if you drop it off on your way to shul on Friday afternoon, you say I'm picking it up in 25 hours, make sure it's ready, that's the same thing as asking to be done on Shabbos. You have to have a reasonable window. You drop it off Friday morning and say I'm picking it up Sunday evening, something like that, that would be fine. Doesn't matter, even if you know. The problem isn't that they're doing it on Shabbos. The problem is that you're asking for it to be done on Shabbos. If you're not asking, even if you know they're going to do it, right? So sometimes we order stuff from Walmart, they ask you to choose a delivery window. So if your delivery window is, let's say, 5 to 7, and Shabbos is over 6:30, that's not a problem because there's no reason. If the window is 5 to 7, they can deliver it at 6:59 just as easily as they can deliver it at 5:01. Okay, 75% of the window is on Shabbos, but 25% is not on Shabbos, and it's not. And if Shabbos ended at 6:58, then I don't know if that would be so reasonable. But as long as you leave a plausible, they do say, if you hire the landscaper to come, and you say I need it. I'm having company come on Sunday morning at 5:30 a.m. Make sure you're done by then, and you ask him. So you call him up, on Friday afternoon at 5:30 p.m. So I'll give you 36 hours to get this done. I need it done by Sunday morning at 5:30 a.m. So he has 36 hours to get it done, but 24 hours is Shabbos. So when could he do it? If he didn't want to do it on Shabbos, he could do it Saturday night, in the middle of the night. And that's not plausible because under normal circumstances, a person will find it difficult to do the work then. That's like asking him to do it on Shabbos. It has to be something where he can reasonably, plausibly do it without doing it on Shabbos. Okay. That's all as far as the first question about asking for work. The second question, which is the one that sort of more has more, more to discuss, is deriving benefit. Because this is independent of whether or how or if you ask for the work at all. In other words, we talked about how dropping up your suit at the dry cleaners, you can't say this should be cleaned on Shabbos. You can't ask your landscaper to come and cut your grass on Shabbos. You can't ask somebody to write a report for you on Shabbos, have it ready right after Shabbos. You can't ask for anything like that. You don't ask for it in that way. You indicate that you're okay no matter when it gets done. You're okay no matter how it gets done. And the non-Jew chooses to work on Shabbos, that's not your problem. It's not a problem at all. Non-Jews are supposed to work on Shabbos. They're not supposed to be observing Shabbos. We say it in the Shabbos davening. Hashem only gave this as a gift to Jewish people. It's actually forbidden for a non-Jew to observe Shabbos. And even if they're studying to convert, they have to make sure not to observe Shabbos fully until they're actually Jewish. That's just one of the rules. So we have no problem with non-Jews doing work on Shabbos. We encourage it. But I can't be the one asking for it directly. But let's say I didn't ask for it. It was just done without my asking, which seems like the ideal situation. I think that's regard to issue number two. Issue number two is that even when there's no issue, no problem in terms of the request, that the work was ordered in a permissible way or wasn't ordered at all, maybe the non-Jew did a favor for me. He brought over, the light was off and he switched it on because he saw that it was too dark for me to read, or the hot water got unplugged and he stuck the plug back in, whatever it is. They did it on their own. But since it was done for me on Shabbos, I can't benefit or use or partake of that thing that was done until after Shabbos is over. Not only after Shabbos is over, but till Shabbos is over and enough time has passed that this could have been done after Shabbos. So it plugs in the hot water, I have to estimate it takes about 5 minutes for the water to boil and become usable as hot water. So I have to wait till 5 minutes after Shabbos is over to use the hot water. The you know, plugged in my crock pot. I did everything. I chilled the potatoes and put the meat in and the seasoning and the barley and everything. I forgot to plug it in, and they plug it in. I have to wait 6 hours after Shabbos or whatever, however long it takes for a slow cooker to do its slow cooking job. Although technically speaking, you might be able to argue that you could, we sometimes, when dinner is delayed and everyone just comes in and they're hungry, so the dinner that was supposed to cook in the slow cooker, if it isn't cooked, you put it into a regular pot on the stove and it's ready in 20 minutes. So I imagine that if a similar result could be accomplished, right? We use the crock pot specifically on Shabbat because you can't cook and we need it to cook overnight. But our cooking cholent for a weekday meal, I just put it in the pot. It'll be done in half an hour or an hour or so. Maybe to allows you made the cholent, you wouldn't need to wait 6 hours because that's how long it takes the crock pot to work. You might just say, oh, wait 1 hour because if I ask them, the point is that you don't want, it was a rabbinic idea of not rewarding, not having a motivation or an incentive to do the wrong thing, since they did not want people benefiting from the work done by a non-Jew. They wanted to make sure that if the work is done by a non-Jew, don't derive any benefit until such time that I'm not benefiting from the work done on Shabbos. In other words, I have to wait an hour until I eat the cholent, until an hour after Shabbos is over, and I have no motivation to ask the non-Jew to do it for me again next Shabbos because I'll have to wait till an hour after Shabbos is over before I eat it. I might as well just wait till Shabbos is over and then ask him. I don't accomplish anything. So, again, if I could wait till after Shabbos is over and ask him to cook it for me on the stove in a regular pot, then I have no motivation to ask him to plug in the crock pot on Shabbos. So perhaps, obviously, this is all after the fact. Yeah. Except for light, if you turn on the light, I have to wait after Shabbos for about a half a second, as long as it takes for somebody to flip a light switch. Right. This guideline is only really relevant when a process takes some time. Now, with the light is one of the examples that's used. We have to define what benefit actually is, because one of the scenarios that's discussed is somebody turns on a light, but often, I wasn't sitting in the dark. Most people don't sit in the dark. Often, what happens is that I didn't turn on all the lights. I didn't turn on the light in a particular room. Or only the right half of the room is illuminated, not the left half. In that case, you can argue that the benefit of the work is relatively limited. Because I had light before, I have a little more light now. So how do you define, what does it mean to not use the light? And I could leave the room, then I'm not here at all, but that seems a bit excessive because I was sitting here enjoying the room in a comfortable chair, sitting at a table. Those things have nothing to do with the light that was just kindled. Even the light that I'm enjoying isn't entirely from the non-Jew's work, but some of it was there from before. So basically the guideline is, I have to see whether there's anything that I'm concretely able to do based on this work that was done for me. Anything that I didn't have before that I have now. So just having more light is not enough of a specific improvement to require me not to partake. But if before it was too dark to read, and now it's light enough to read, and that's because he turned on an additional light, and I shouldn't read. If I was able to eat, I can eat by the candlelight because even though now there's more light, it might be easier or appetizing because you can see my food better, but I was able to eat beforehand. So you would not be allowed to partake of the additional light only when it comes to activities that were impossible before and became possible through the light. So that the idea of leaving the room would be relevant when if there is a discussion about leaving the room, but then it wouldn't apply in this case where there was light beforehand and he was not asked on his own, so there's nothing there that's rises to the level that would require me not to partake. I'm not really getting benefit. I didn't really do anything wrong. So there's no problem with continuing to be in that room, continuing to do the things I was doing before. It's kind of a I didn't ask, and there's no additional benefit because there's nothing that I can do now that I couldn't do before. It says a person, he has an example here of someone's shirt became dirty, badly stained and unusable. And the maid cleaned it. You can't wear that shirt on Shabbos. You have to wait an hour after Shabbos, as long as it takes to run the washing machine or whatever it was. However, he doesn't say this, but I think it's obvious that if it was a small stain, it wouldn't have prevented me from wearing the shirt. It would have just been, a little bit unpleasant to look at, but not something that would really, I wouldn't think twice about putting it on and wearing it for the rest of the day. The nun who cleans up the stain, I would still be allowed to wear the shirt because I would have worn it anyways. And the other kind of big, it's not really a new rule, but it's just kind of a further application, is that turning off a light is generally not a problem. If the light is off, it's on, and I left the light on in the basement. And again, I can't ask the non-Jew, but the non-Jew notices, you're not using the basement, are you? I say, no, I just light on because I didn't turn it off and I can't turn it off on Shabbos. And, no, let me turn it off for you. Then you turn it off. They're just saving electricity. First of all, I mean, there's nothing to not benefit from. I'm not required to pay the electric company extra money just to make up for the illegal savings. But it's not really illegal savings because there's no real benefit. There is a benefit that I'm saving money, but I'm not using it on Shabbos. We talked about can't use it on Shabbos. You got to wait till after Shabbos. What does that even look like? I mean, I get my bill at the end of the month. There's no benefit that you can directly say. There's a benefit in the larger context of my life, but I'm not physically deriving direct benefit on Shabbos. So there's nothing to restrict, nothing to prohibit. And that's why, again, we're not talking about asking the non-Jew to do work, which is never allowed, almost never. But we're talking about if it's done, it would be meaningless to say don't use it, don't use what. And that's why you could even go to the step of not asking. And not asking, you have to do it right, but prohibition is to ask the non-Jew to do work. There's no prohibition. Since we said there's no prohibition if a non-Jew does the work on his own, but I didn't ask him, well, what's the prohibition? So to enable him to manipulate circumstances so that the person acts on his own, right? So, if it was if you had a cat, and I don't have a cat, but if you had a cat and you left the light switch on, and you would say put something in proximity to the light switch, knowing that the cat will swipe at the thing and turn off the light switch, that would be a way of manipulating. If you have a baby, we work at a very young age, and you know that when the baby always reaches for light switches and plays with them, you would be allowed to stand there with the baby, talk about a very young, less than a year old, no intelligence, no understanding, and no encouragement, but you simply stand there. The baby plays with the switch. And, I didn't ask for work. The baby's not doing anything to benefit me. And the light is off. So I save money. And with a non-Jew, you can do the adult version of that is to say, I can't believe I forgot to turn the light off. The electric bills are so high these days. But since I keep Shabbos, I won't be able to do anything about it. So now what the pitfall is they often say, well, would you like me to turn it off? Uh, so you have to say something like, look, the same way we're not allowed to do it, we're not allowed to ask other people to do it for us. I could not make a request like that of you. Because, well, if I do it myself, at that point they'll catch on. They're like, well, I could just do it. I'm like, I'm not going to stop you. I can show you where the switch is. So something like that. So that could work. So again, because there's no benefit, there's no asking and there's no benefiting. And it's really, again, it's two very simple rules. It's very consistent and very simple once you know it. You can't ask the person to do it. You can't have direct benefit. In that case, I'm doing neither. But it goes even further. Not just because I'm saving money on my electric bill. I'm saying I left the light on in my bedroom. Same thing. I'm not going to sleep tonight because I left the light on in my bedroom and I can't turn it off. And he says, you want me to turn it off for you? Well, let me show you where the switch is. I can't really ask you to do anything, but I'll show you where the switch is. It turns the light in the bedroom. So you'll say, well, why are you allowed to use the bedroom? And the answer is because the non-Jew didn't build the room and didn't build the bed. They didn't build anything. They simply removed a nuisance, which in this case is the light. They didn't create dark. There is no form of work, anyways, in Shabbos called creating dark, and dark is not a thing. They simply removed the light. Again, it's no different really from turning off the light in the basement so then I get a lower electric bill. There was a benefit, but I'm not using anything that was. They didn't cook cholent that I'm going to eat on Shabbos. They didn't light a candle that I'm going to use to read with on Shabbos. They simply took away something that was hindering me. So like this, a lamp clock is ringing, have the non-Jew shut it off, anything like that. Yeah. Now, right. Some examples, just kind of going back for a second. Some other examples of kind of, yes. Yeah, well, so there's no creation of dark, but it is work. It's work without benefit. In other words, lighting a candle when there's already light in the room, it is work, but I'm not benefiting because I can already see. In this case, blowing out a candle is also work. I'm not benefiting because, again, it's just like when my electric bill is lower. The non-Jew did work. That's why my electric bill is lower, because he did the work of shutting off the light. I'm not benefiting because the results of that work are a takeaway. Look, the non-Jew writes a report. Let's say I need the doctor to fill out some paperwork for me to submit to the insurance company, and they do it on Shabbos. I'm not benefiting from it on Shabbos. I'm benefiting from it, but not now. Maybe I feel I have peace of mind that I mean that. Oh, wait, to shul. I passed the doctor's house. Like, oh, I filled out the paperwork you've been asking me to take care of. Don't. So I say thanks a lot, and I feel good on Shabbos. But I'm not benefiting from that paperwork because it's just something that I need. But I can't ask them to do it on Shabbos. But if they do it on Shabbos, it is work. But it's not work that there are two. A person can do work. Again, a person, let's say, a God forbid, a Jew himself can cook food on Shabbos, or they can write a report on Shabbos. If they cook the food on Shabbos, they're benefiting on Shabbos. If they write a report on Shabbos, they're also doing work on Shabbos, but the benefit of that work comes later. Because the Torah's law about not doing work says don't work on Shabbos. The rabbi's law about not asking an Jew is don't benefit from work done for you on Shabbos. So the rabbis introduced this benefit. The rabbinic rule is a restriction on benefit. And they didn't restrict work. Non-Jews are allowed to work. Oh, I can't benefit, so you have to define what benefit is. Just a couple other examples here of partial benefit and permitted. It was light enough to read, but now I can read more easily. That's okay. As opposed to if it was light enough to do other things, but I couldn't read, and now I could read, so then I can't use the additional light for reading, only for the things I could have done before. If person he turns on a light and it's the middle of the afternoon, I don't benefit from that light, but then the sun goes down, and now I could see better. Now I can't use the light anymore because now that new candle is making a difference. If the doorknob is loose, or the chair leg is loose, he tightens it. If it was usable beforehand, but now it's sturdier, it's okay because I was able to sit on the chair. It was just a little shaky. Now it's better. I was able to turn the doorknob. It was just a little harder to manipulate. That's okay. However, because again, the distinction would be to there was no light. Now there's light. Or if there's if it's interesting, a mildly chilly day, they turn on the heat. Now, it wasn't freezing. There was no heat. The temperature was tolerable, but there was no heat. Now there's heat. So it's a new benefit that didn't exist in any other form. That doesn't matter. In other words, whether say it was light. We say was it light enough to read? Was it light enough to eat? Was it light? Because the light, the benefit is what it enables me to do. Whereas the warmth is my comfort. So the comfort that wasn't there, now it is. Okay. All right. So let's take a look at the parsha. Oh yeah, today's Tuesday. I should know this because every year the class is on Tuesday. So I'm Beshalach. And that's because why is it today? I'm not sure why it's today. Where's the Chumash? So this is thank you. This is Beshalach, and there's many things in this parsha. The most famous one, of course, is the splitting of the sea. But there's also the story of how the Jews traveled to the desert and Hashem provided food for them from the heavens. I'm just not sure. Now, there is obviously a great miracle there. It's kind of a little bit overshadowed by some of the other great miracles that happened around this time, like coming out of Egypt, crossing the sea, getting the Torah, but this was an ongoing miracle that lasted for the whole 40 years they were in the desert. And it also has a clear and very specific message, a lesson that Jews were supposed to internalize. And it's pretty obvious when you read the story how the food fell down from heaven every day, every morning. Everybody was supposed to collect the same amount. Everyone was in the same tax bracket. Right? There was a certain amount of food per person. You were supposed to collect that amount. Now you were supposed to, it was part of the instructions was to collect a certain amount. But even if you didn't, even if you took less or even if you took more, you came home, it turned out you had exactly the amount that you were supposed to get. You weren't supposed to leave anything over for the next day. Everything was supposed to be finished. Even if you did, the next day you would discover that it was not usable anymore. And on Friday, the most surprising of all, twice as much food came down. Everyone came home with twice as much in their cupboard. On Shabbos, nothing fell down at all. And that, of course, is one of the sources of the famous double challah that we serve at each meal on Shabbos. Double portion that fell on Friday. And the upshot of all of this, taken together, is a lesson called bitachon, trust in Hashem. And we talk about emunah, which means faith in Hashem. Faith and trust. There's different ways to analyze the exact nuances of those words, which are both so common. Somewhere I read, I don't remember where, that emunah or faith, but as belief, means that if somebody tells me there's a chair behind me, I believe them. If I trust the person, then I believe them that there is a chair behind me. I'm confident about it. Bitachon, which means trust, says that I'll sit down on this chair without even looking to see if it's there. I did that story about I think there's various stories which have this motif in it, but the man is told to buy a lottery ticket, and he has faith in Hashem and he'll win the lottery for 100,000 rubles. And what happens on the way to the post office, somebody offers him 95,000 rubles to buy his ticket. Of course, he'll do it. He'll cash in. That shows a lack of trust, because if you believe that Hashem will make you win the lottery, why would you sell a $100,000 lottery ticket for 95,000 rubles? Obviously, you're going to win, unless you had some doubt. You weren't 100% sure you were going to win, and you figured you'd hedge your bets. So that's the concept. And it seems that we know that the Jews did eat them they ate this food for 40 years during the whole time they traveled through the desert. So one of the interpretations offered for that is that Hashem wanted the people to live this way for such a long period of time, 40 years, because these lessons are not easy to internalize. And everyone, they stood at Mount Sinai and they saw Hashem's presence, so to speak, and they heard Hashem's voice clearing the Ten Commandments, I am Hashem your God, and they accepted it in advance. Naaseh and Ishmael will unquestioning acceptance of Hashem's word. And that's all well and good. And it's all quite